Welcome to the Daily Bitcoin Podcast, where knowledge meets financial freedom. We're here to break down the world of Bitcoin. No fluff, no hype, just real talk about how this digital asset is reshaping the future of money.
All right, and we are live. Hello, this is Craig LeBlanc, the doorman, your host, with Dr. Ahmad Ammous, and he is, I met him on one of our shows talking about Fiat food and how our food supply has just gotten hammered here recently. I say recently, it's probably been a long time in the works, but I wanted to have him on the show so we could just give more of the work he's doing more attention and try to get it out there to my growing audience. So welcome to the show, Ahmad. How are you doing?
Hi, Craig. Thank you for having me. I'm doing well.
Yeah. So can you give us a little background as far as where you came from? And then we can get into what you're working on today and the kind of content you're looking to create.
Yeah, so I'm an internal medicine physician. I completed my medical school in Lebanon, and then I came and completed my residency and now work in the US. I work as a primary care physician. And I mean, ever since medical school, I was just very disappointed by our medical system, how we benefit from keeping people sick rather than trying to fix their issues. And it so happened that I started to understand the stuff when I understood Bitcoin, and it all made sense about how fiat money leads to fiat healthcare, complicated by fiat food. And my mission is to try and raise awareness about that so that people can take control of their health.
Yeah. So what started you on that as far as, I guess, when did you notice, or what were some of the triggers you noticed as far as?
So I mean, in medical school, the first 2 years of medical school, you're basically just getting, you're not managing any patients, you're just getting exposure. And they would get us all these cases of, like, say, chronic autoimmune disease, like rheumatoid arthritis or something. And these are conditions that you see the patient, they're doing everything that the doctor is asking them to. They're taking their medications on time. They're doing everything that the doctor prescribes, and they're still not getting better. And they still have a very miserable existence because of it. They're always in pain, despite following everything that the evidence-based medicine recommends. And I wasn't satisfied with that answer, so I started looking elsewhere. I started looking at the internet, and I saw that there are people that are doing things alternative to what modern medicine recommends, and they're getting a lot more benefit, and they're getting rid of all these conditions. And it was also at the same time that I started to improve my own diet, and I started to feel so much better. And wow, it turns out that the internet is full of people who've also improved their diet and helped heal all sorts of conditions that they have. And that got me interested in, so why aren't we why aren't we taught in medical school how to fix people's diets? Why aren't we telling that to our patients rather than just pushing pills on them? And that's what led me to realize that medicine is kind of corrupt, and medicine just seeks to make money off of pills rather than fix the root cause. And I've just been reading more and more about that and trying to understand it more and more ever since.
Yeah. So it seems like you said, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you want sick patients so that you can sell them services and medicines, and they're a continuing, I guess, profit center. So healing patients would be a bad business decision for someone looking to sell more medicine. Is that kind of what you've discovered?
Yes, as sad and as dark as that sounds, but that's how it is. And that's why our modern system is the way it is, and that's why so many people are unsatisfied with the medical care that they get.
And so one of the ways that they can keep you sick is just by keeping you malnourished, to where you're really, I've noticed when I changed my diet, I felt like my body was starving previously, even though it felt full temporarily, but it was starving for nutrition. Is that, so, are you telling me from a medical standpoint that is what's happening when you're on this fiat food?
Yes, you are malnourished. You are not getting the nutrients that you need, and you're also getting a lot of toxins in your processed food. And so that combination is quite bad for you. And that combination is what starts and what propagates all sorts of diseases that we see these days.
So where do you think the toxins are coming from? Is that most of the preservatives and maybe some of the cheap stuff they put in the foods?
Yeah, the biggest culprit now is processed seed oils. And so these have been in a part of our diet only for the last maybe 50 years. And they are composed of the the oils in the seeds that nobody has ever been able to process or eat. But we've managed to, our industry has become good enough to basically process them at high heat. But while you're doing that, you're producing these free radicals that are very toxic to your body. But these oils, they happen to be very cheap, so they're put in all sorts of processed foods, and restaurants use them to fry stuff. And these oils are very toxic to your body.
Now, can you name some of the oils? Are we talking about like canola oil?
Canola oil, corn oil, safflower oil, uh, basically anything that comes from a plant seed.
Mm.
Soy
How,
oil, soybean oil.
how about olive oil, avocado, those as well?
Those are from the fruit of the plant, so they're fine. Avocado and olive oil are fine, same as coconut oil. Because, I mean, naturally, to think about it, is the plant develops fruits for us to eat because it wants us to spread the seed. So basically, you eat an olive and you're going to excrete the seed somewhere else, and you're helping the plant propagate. So it's not to the plant's disadvantage. It's not to the plant's advantage to try and poison you through that fruit. But if you're eating the seed itself, you're preventing the plant from propagating. And that's why these historically people didn't eat, the seed of a soybean or of the olive. But modern industrialization has enabled us to break that seed down to get to whatever is inside of it. But when you do that, you're doing it at such high heats that you're denaturing all these oils.
Mm. And so what's happening in the inside of the body that's causing a lot of this stuff?
The main issue with seed oils is that your cell membranes, the membranes of all your cells, are made from fatty acids. And when you eat those seed oils, they replace those acids that are in your membranes with ones that are, artificial, not similar to the ones in your body. And they make your cells susceptible to damage and makes you more likely to get sick.
And you said the stuff coming out of avocado, coconut, olive oil, I guess don't have these, so that they're more able to use for cooking purposes.
Exactly. And they're not processed at high temperatures, because any oil, if you put it at such a high temperature as they do in seed oils, that denatures it and makes it not able to be used for, feeding purposes.
So essentially everything that we see that's fried uses all of these oils you're talking about. So all fried foods would be kind of bathed in it.
And yes, that's the main issue with fried food. It's not eating fats per se, because fats are not bad for you. Healthy fats such as butter, ghee, tallow, olive oil, coconut oil, these are good for you. But it's the processed fats that are bad for you, especially if they're put at such high temperature, as in like how deep frying does. And so it's a disastrous combination. Most of the addictive food that people struggle with these days, it's because it's made of highly processed carbohydrates that are deep fried in these processed oils. So it's a double lose situation.
And then what's the highly processed side? What's going on there?
The main issue with highly processed foods is your body was meant. Number one is they put a lot of preservatives, artificial chemicals to prolong this food's shelf life. And these chemicals are, either neurotoxic or carcinogenic, if not both. So you want to avoid, that's why you want to avoid processed foods. When it comes to processed sugars, the issue with processing is that, so naturally your body, if it ate sugars, it was in a sort of like, it was in a more complex form, such as, you eat a sweet potato. The carbohydrates are there, but they're associated with some starches, some cell membranes, the coating of the sweet potato, so that when you're eating it, your body takes time to digest and get to the sugars. What processed food has enabled us to is you get rid of all the stuff on the side and you're just taking the sugar purely, and that raises your blood sugar so high. And when you get all those, that high spike in sugar, that's toxic to your cells. And in response to that, you release a lot of insulin, but eventually that mechanism stops working, and that's when you get to insulin resistance. And that's why you have all the problems with diabetes and pre-diabetes that we have these days.
And so what are the healthier forms of this? Or mainly we're just looking to stay away from processed. So I would guess the good sugars would be like in the fruits or berries or stuff like that.
Fruits and berries, in moderation. You don't want to overdo it, of course. Eating things in season also, because your body is more able to digest and process these plants when it's that environment, when they're eaten in the environment that they were raised in. So you don't want to be somewhere cold. Like I live in Boston, you don't want to be eating mangoes in December, because that just doesn't work with how evolutionally your body is adapted to. You eat things in the winter that were available in the winter.
Mm-hmm.
And the main thing is white sugar. White sugar is highly processed, so the sugar hits that you get, the rises in blood sugar that you get, are bad for your body. Same thing with highly processed high fructose corn syrup, which they use here a lot in the US. There's a lot of corn that's grown here in the US, and they want to use it somehow, so they end up putting it in all the processed candies and processed foods. And that also has toxic effects on the liver and on your blood sugar levels.
So what's your take on honey as far as a sweetener?
It's good in season. You don't want to be overdoing it in the winter, because there's no honey in the winter. And in moderation, of course.
Now, are there certain types? I've noticed a lot of the cheaper honeys are just nothing but high fructose corn syrup versus the ones that are more unfiltered, raw, wild bee, stuff like that. Is that what you want to be looking for?
100%. They either put sugar in the honey itself, or they sometimes just put sugar in the hives of the bees, so that instead of them going to flowers and stuff to collect feeding from there, they would just eat the sugar that's in the hives, and that's also not good.
Right. And so what do you look for there? Just raw, unfiltered, wild bees kind of thing? That's what you want to be looking for if you're going to use honey?
Yeah, the wilder it is, the better it is. If you know someone who grows honey, that would be great too. Yeah.
Okay. And so now how about dairy as far as that's concerned? Because I know, that's kind of a dark spot for me.
Yeah. So a lot of people have no issues with dairy. A lot of people have a lot of issues. So you have to know if you have any health issues, if you have any gut issues, if you have any allergic issues, it's good to try and eliminate dairy and see if dairy gets you out of that. Some people have no issue handling dairy. If you have an issue with dairy, it might be worth it to try and substitute it with raw dairy, because raw milk contains a lot of the enzymes that the cow itself produces to help its calves digest the proteins of the milk. The pasteurization process eliminates all these enzymes, and so that milk is harder for us to digest.
Now, the pasteurization, I guess unpasteurized milk seems to have somewhat of a dark past, or at least that's what the word on the street is. it necessary to pasteurize your milk, or is it okay to have raw milk, or can you tell us a little bit more about that?
So pasteurization started before there was refrigeration. So at that point, it was very important to pasteurize the milk to try and get it to places far from the farms. But now, if you get to a point where you can get it from the source quickly and it's refrigerated all the way, and you're not hoping to keep it in your fridge for too long, then it's fine to just eat it raw. There's definitely a big taboo around it here, and it's illegal in some states here in the U.S. But if you trust the source and if you're able to get it fresh, then by all means. Milk is not a product that's supposed to be shelf safe for 2 weeks. It's not that way. And pasteurization allows us to do that, but that's not normal.
How long does raw milk stay good refrigerated? What's a normal time for it?
Maybe a week is max, so.
And so a lot of this, I guess, comes from logistics, centralizing, you being so far away from where the food was grown, the logistics of refrigerating, keeping it on the shelf, getting it into your hands, and then it staying good in your home and extending all these time frames, I guess, is where a lot of the trouble's coming from, correct?
100%. And I mean, all this centralization, what it's leading is that people are getting their food not where they live. But that's not how human beings were created. We always lived around where we get our food. More people are starting to shift to that direction. So eating from local farmers market, etc. If you go to a farmers market once a week, you can get your raw milk from there, and you're good.
Yeah. And so you think that's more of the solution, is source your food locally. That way it has all the, and maybe what are the natural benefits from sourcing your food locally? I saw you touched on that a little bit. Can you expand on that?
So I'm very interested in the effects of human diet on our health, but also I'm very interested in the effects of light. So your body gets a sense of where it is in life based on your light environment, based on what time of the year it is, how long is the day. And so these signals affect your metabolism in a certain way. These signals are also going to the food that's grown around you. So you wanna coordinate so that the signals that your food is getting is the same as the ones you are getting. And so in that case, your body is more able to digest the sugars if your environment is allowing it to grow crops, grow mangoes, grow coconuts. And you're optimizing your health that way. You're optimizing your metabolism. And that's why you want to try and eat locally.
So the logistics chain that we have now allows us to pull literally globally food into our, say, Walmart supply chain, where these foods could be grown halfway across the planet. And then, but correct me if I'm wrong, a friend of mine used to own a blueberry farm, and he said the best time to pick the blueberry is almost right before it hits the ground, because the plant is going to put all the nutrients last minute into it. And then it's the sweetest right before you pick it, which can't be done if you're having to pick it, put it in a container, ship it, have it end up in all through the logistics chain, and have it not be rotten by the time you see it in your grocery store. Is that kind of what's going on? People are actually picking these things long before they're even really, by nature standard, be ready?
Yes, and there are other produce like tomatoes, for example, that they pick them up when they're still basically green.
Yes.
And then they spray artificial fertilizers on them to help them mature and ripen while they're in the boxes, basically. And
now
that's not normal. That's not natural.
Yes. How about as far as I started eating a lot more red meat, not a strict carnivore diet, but I'm noticing that I almost don't crave anything else. It's almost like I feel like I'm getting everything I need. I'm just kind of listening to my body. Can you explain what might be going on there?
What might be going on is a great resource to read about this sort of stuff is the work of Weston Price. Weston Price was a dentist in the early 1900s who before there was major travel going everywhere, he went and he explored a lot of tribes and indigenous people that haven't been touched by civilization, that haven't been touched by processed foods. And what he noticed about them, he's a dentist, he noticed about how good their dentation is and how healthy they looked. And he noticed that the main constituent of their diet was always meat and fat. So in every one of these cultures, their main source of calories was meat and fat in some sort of way, some sort of local animal. And he noticed that people tended to favor fatty food, and especially for like pregnant women, for people that are in the fertile age. And because there was at that point starting the beginning of all the vegetarian and vegan movements, and people were trying to argue that, oh, the natural diet is without meat. But actually his work showed that the healthiest diets are usually very high in meat and fat. So the percentages of vegetables and fruits in these diets differed, but the main constituent was always some sort of meat and fat. So if you want to be the healthiest, you want your diet to be consisting mainly of meat and fat.
Okay, so I was actually having an argument with a friend of mine. We were at a barbecue place, and I was trying to tell her that the fat is actually good for you from, meat sources. And she said, well, that's going to spike your cholesterol, high blood pressure, cause something in the veins, like I don't know what she said, plaque buildup or something like that. So can you speak on that topic?
Yeah, it's a very Fiat topic, very Fiat propagated topic, where universities get funding to pursue a certain story, and if they say anything that conflicts with that story, they don't get funding, and we end up where we are. So as Western prices work shows, societies have always favored fat, animal fats, including saturated animal fat. And there was never an agenda against it. In the 1950s, there were increasing rates of coronary artery disease, cardiovascular disease, and people were looking everywhere to try and find out what the cause was. One researcher by the name of Ansel Keys published this study where he looked at rates of coronary artery disease versus saturated fat intake. And it's a famous study. It's called the 7-country study, where he saw that in certain countries, as the intake of saturated fat went up, the rates of cardiovascular disease also went up. So he was the one who started this lipid hypothesis, all this anti-fat propaganda. Little did people don't mention the fact that his study excluded a lot of countries that didn't fit that model. And Keys himself, before he died, he said, this lipid hypothesis doesn't make sense. So, but the reason his studies are propagated is because when you vilify animal fat is very difficult to centralize and to make so much margins off the profits from it. But if you tell people that animal fat is bad for you, the alternative is eating processed seed oils, which can be centralized and do get food companies a lot of profit. So the food companies took those false studies and propagated the lipid hypothesis to the extreme because it made them a lot of money. Mm-hmm. At the same time, when you were trying to tell people that try to avoid animal fat, the natural replacement for fat in the diet is carbohydrates. And so people started eating more carbohydrates. At the same time, all the sugar companies starting using that to their advantage and propagated those hypotheses of fat is bad for you. And finally, on the last part of this agenda is, when you're saying fat is bad, you're also telling people that cholesterol is bad. And they started measuring their cholesterol levels and attributing high cholesterol to coronary artery disease and cardiovascular mortality. Even though the studies don't actually support that, there's only a few studies that are not very well powered. And the entire cholesterol industry was started, and the entire cholesterol lowering medications, the statins, which are the highest selling medications in history, also benefited from all this propaganda.
I see. Yeah, so wow, I wish we would have started with that one, because that is such a big point. Every time I tell people I'm eating just almost exclusively red meat, that they jump straight to that. And I have a lot of relatives that are in the medical industry, and it would seem like what you said is the only thing that's taught in medical school is that saturated fat is bad for you. Why is that? Or is that starting to be reversed at all, or is it live and well in medical school?
Unfortunately, the medical field and doctors are the least open-minded people out there, and all the how doctors practice, it all comes from a centralized authority. You have to follow guidelines, and the people writing the guidelines, they just want to sell medications. They just want to sell cholesterol lowering medications, and they're also getting benefits from the food industry. So they're still trying to push for seed oils and for carbohydrates, and so that is not changing the medical field. But if you get to the point where you don't want to take their word for granted, and you want to research the stuff on your own, then you will find that there's a lot of evidence suggesting that fat is not actually bad for you.
And where's some, aside from yourself, is there any type of journals or any type of channels or anything else where people can learn more about this and just kind of become more well-versed in it? Because really, you're the first doctor I've come across that has any, credentialed way of saying, hey, this is what's going on. Is there?
Yeah, there's a lot of people out there. And there's a lot of studies out there. There's a lot of books out there, and The Big Fat Surprise is one of them by Nina Teo shows. The Cholesterol Myth is another one, and there are people out there, but they're not in the mainstream.
Now, I notice, at least for me, is there something special about red meat versus all the other meats like chickens, poultry, fish, stuff like that?
So we are made of red meat. So your amino acid composition, your fat composition is very similar to red meats. It's the closest to our composition that there is. So that's why a lot of the nutrients, a lot of the amino acids, a lot of the fats are there. That's why it feels more satisfying. That's why you feel you get more energy when you eat it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good. Because I noticed that, and I didn't know if it was just a head game going on, or if I feel like the only thing I'm attracted to right now is just red meat. It's if you're part of that listen to your body type of diet, I find that this is what I'm craving constantly, and I really don't want anything else. That's a good thing?
It's a great thing, and it hits the spot, and it gets you everything you need. And a lot of cuisine historically, the way the cuisine was designed is because people didn't have access to that much red meat because it was expensive, it was hard to grow. Our modern industrialization and processing powers have allowed us to get to the point where meat is more affordable relatively to people. So if you look at like all these diets, you go to a Mexican restaurant, what they're trying to do in that burrito or in that taco is, break up the meat into smaller and smaller quantities and combine it with other stuff to, so that you're more full with the least amount of meat.
Mm-hmm.
If you are able to afford the meat on its own, then you are getting all the nutrients without a lot of the other stuff that it takes some more effort to digest and is less nutritious for you.
Yeah, I would love to get you on another show with a cattle rancher I met through Texas Slim. I don't know if you know his work.
Yeah, he's great.
Well, he introduced me to another man that's over in Colorado that helped him start the Beef Initiative. And he goes into, red meat is the great destination for us to end up at, but not all red meat is raised equally. He goes into a lot of vaccines and stuff, because the veterinary medicine sounds very similar to the medical field that you're talking about, as far as being funded by people that are just trying to cheapen the food. So I think that would make a good show for y'all to both talk on that one.
100%. I mean, all those vaccines that are being pushed on people are also being pushed on cattle as well, which is dangerous. And that's why it's always better to try and local source your food. Try and find the local rancher that doesn't use all these measures and his meat is not processed.
Yeah. Now I noticed that when I'm eating, let's say, a fatty piece of meat, I'm eating it, and then at some point, like, I'm enjoying the fat, it tastes great, and at some point, like, a hard switch comes on and says, I'm still hungry, I want more red meat, but I've had enough of the fat. What's going on there?
Yeah, so your fat is the most satiating of the three nutrients, and there's only so much fat that your body can digest. And it's very good at telling you when you've had enough fat. So it's always a better idea to start eating the fat first. Once you're full, you can continue eating on with the protein.
Yeah. And I've noticed it's literally like a switch. It goes from I love it to I would be sick if I ate anymore.
Yeah, and that's the problem with modern, like, carbohydrate filled diets, is there's no limit to how much carbohydrate a person can eat. When you eat carbohydrates, your body just is craving more and more carbohydrates.
Yeah. I noticed when I used to eat carbohydrates, I would feel my stomach hurting from being so full. And that would be my trigger, is that I better stop eating or I'm going to be sick.
Yeah, and the reason is your bodies favor the more nutritious food, which is meat and fat, but you ate more of the carbohydrates, the starches, the roots of the plants and the fruits, when there wasn't that much meat and fat. And that was a signal that we were in, a famine, that there isn't any meat around. And when that happens, you want to try and eat as much fruit and as much of these root vegetables as you can to store these nutrients, because we're in a famine.
Yeah. Now, is there a growing practice of doctors that really look at a more holistic approach, maybe a functional medicine, where they're looking at your diet, your exercise, and not necessarily treating you when you're sick, but prescribing a healthy lifestyle for you to keep you healthy? Is that
100%? Yeah, I mean, there's something called the Institute of Functional Medicine, and they practice functional medicine. They're definitely a lot more aware of what's going on. The caution is they tend to, because they understand what's going on, they tend to charge prices that are, not affordable to most people, because they can, because there's not that many doctors that are aware of what's going on. Yeah.
And so what does that look like, as far as, let's say I found a good functional medicine doctor. Can you maybe go through what a visit might look like? And
so I'm not personally a big fan of the functional medicine approach, because they rely a lot on lab work. So they would run a huge gamut, like hundreds of tests on you. These tests cost hundreds of dollars, and they're able to tell you, oh, you're deficient here, you should supplement with X, you should cut this from your diet. My personal approach is to just listen to your lifestyle as a whole and give you tips of what things are missing, what things you need to add to try and get you healthier.
And so go ahead.
You go ahead, no problem.
If you had to give a general prescription to the planet, as far as obviously eliminate processed foods, source your food locally at a farmer's market, eat within season, like, what would be maybe a top 5 things you would say, well, this is going to be good advice for everyone?
So I think number one is you want to base your diet on meats and fats. So animal products need to be the basis of your diet. Every meal should include meat, fat, or eggs, or some sort of protein, animal protein. So that's number one. Number two is cut out all the processed foods, cut out all the processed vegetable oils. and that's number 2. Number 3, I'm very interested in light environment. So a lot of our modern health conditions are worsened by our improper light exposure. So, and the main issue with that is that our days are not bright enough and our nights are too bright. So if our natural ancestors, they lived outside most of the time. There was no indoors. So when you're being outside, you're getting all the benefits of the sunshine. You're being energized. The sun directly energizes your mitochondria, the cell houses of your cell. So during the day, you want to be outside as much as possible. And also at night, you want to try and keep your nights as dark as possible. So after sunset, you want to try and limit the bulbs that are on in your house. You want to try and cut out the LED lamps, which emit blue light, which is bad for you at night. And that also is very important advice. Another piece of advice is to try and get morning sunshine. So our ancestors, everyone used to think of morning light as therapeutic, and it is. It has infrared and red light that's very healing. So you want to, as early as you can after sunrise, you want to try and be outside for at least 10-15 minutes with the minimal amount of clothing as possible.
And what does that do for you?
So most people, when they think of sunlight, they just think of the benefits of vitamin D. But the benefits of sunlight are a lot more than that. Some of the benefits include your mitochondria. So the mitochondria are the cell houses of your cells. This is how your body generates energy. And it's interesting because the cells taking up mitochondria was probably the reason why complex life was able to form on our planet. So it used to be, mitochondria are actually a bacteria. So all bacteria, before there was any multicellular organisms, they allowed the mitochondria to join in their cells, and they would specialize that the main bacteria would work on obtaining food, while the mitochondria would just focus on getting energy. And that's what we call a symbiotic relationship. And that allowed the organism, which was the original bacteria, to become a lot more complex, just because they had the mitochondria, the light, the energy house of the cell. So most of our diseases these days can be explained by mitochondrial dysfunction. And this dysfunction is either due to toxins, due to inadequate nutrition, inadequate vitamins, inadequate fuel source. And another important one is sunlight. Your mitochondria are directly charged by sunlight. So you want to try and get as much sun as you can. And the most helpful spectrum of the sun is seen early in the morning, as close to sunrise as possible.
And so if you, in an ideal scenario, if you could just be outside all day, that morning sun from sunrise maybe to what, mid-morning is the best for you?
Yeah, from sunrise to 9 to 10, that's the best time. Okay. If you are lighter skinned, you probably want to try and minimize your exposure around noontime, because that's when the highest UV index is. That's when the highest percentage of UV light is. And then after 4 p.m., that's when the UV starts to go down. And that sunset is also has a lot of the infrared and red light that's also beneficial to your health.
Now, what does that have any health benefits to your eyes as well, as far as exposing your eyes to natural light?
Yes. So one of the things is that your retina, the blood vessels in your retina, they dilate when they're exposed to the sun. So that allows more blood to get into your eyes, rejuvenates your eyesight. And also, in our modern living, we're always exposed. We're always looking at close things. We're looking at monitors. We're looking at books. We're looking at TVs. But your eye is meant to look into the distance. It has both muscles to be able to look in the distance and look at close things. We don't train our distant muscles enough. We don't look at objects far off from us enough. So that's why it feels good to look out from a mountain. That's why it feels good to look from your balcony. And you can also train those muscles by looking into the sun, because the sun is far.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so is this a new topic for you? It looks like your first was more Fiat food, and you said now you're more interested in light and sunlight and what it does. Is that something you're recently in?
Yeah, I think, I mean, people should focus on their diet as well. Both topics are important, but I feel not enough people are talking about optimizing your light environment as well, because it might be just as important.
And are you considering writing a book on that as well?
We'll see. I enjoy talking to patients more than I enjoy writing. So
yeah. Well, and so where are you putting out most of your just content? Just here on X, or do you have any?
Mostly on X. Yeah, my profile is Ammous MD. I have a newsletter that you can sign up for through my Twitter account as well. And yes, that's mainly it.
So any other advice you can give somebody as far as just living a healthy lifestyle from your perspective?
Yeah, I would say diet and light are the most important. Human relationships are also very important. The people that you're around, be around people that make you happy, be around people that make you laugh, and you do the same to them. I don't think also that's something we don't talk enough about, but the psychology of illness is also very important.
And so I guess that's the old adage, stress is the biggest killer. So and relationships can be a big source of stress to people. What's going on there as far as stress killing people?
Stress is kind of like a umbrella term that we throw a lot of things underneath. But yes, modern life is stressful. I don't think our bodies were created to work 80-hour weeks and just for those 2 days off just be chasing errands. And I think modern life, propagated by fiat money, is harming our bodies rather than helping us. Try and take more time off. Try and be with your family more. It's not about the money, it's about the relationships in life. And if you pursue the wrong things, your body will tell you that it's not feeling okay. And your body is trying to hint at you to what the important things are in life.
Yeah. I guess you could say I semi-retired about a year ago. And now I've been advising everyone I can meet, man, if you can take a year off just to think and relax, you're going to find so many other things that you can work on for your health that you didn't notice when you were just constantly working and having to show up on a schedule and really push yourself that until you take a break, you just don't even notice how stressed out you are.
Yeah. I mean, if you're giving your body the proper nutrition, if you are not stressing it out by artificial light at night, if you are getting proper sun exposure during the day, your body will naturally be able to handle a lot more stress. You'll be able to work better. You'll be able to, your sleep will be more refreshing so that you wake up more refreshed in the morning. So you have to work on that stuff first, but also don't drive yourself down to the ground just because of work.
Yeah. And so how is it up there in Boston as far as that community there?
I work a Fiat job because I'm waiting on my green card and my visa that has to be sponsored by a hospital. So I kind of, at work, I don't talk about this stuff. That's why I'm more active online. I like to get the word out that way, and I connect with similar minded people online.
Now, you mentioned a lot about your Fiat job. Where did you learn? What kind of rabbit hole did you go down to find out more about Fiat and what it does to the system?
Yeah, so I'm lucky that my brother knows a little bit about Fiat and about Bitcoin. My brother is Saifuddin. He wrote the Bitcoin standard and then the Fiat standard. He's an author. So he taught me a lot about this stuff. He sort of he reads and just gives me the conclusion. So I'm lucky that way. But it is quite incredible to kind of see the links between how bad money causes fiat everywhere else.
Yeah. Now, does he drag you along on his journey as far as bringing you in to speak, or as a resource? Does he ever pick your mind as far as the medical field?
We do, yes. We talk about this stuff a lot. He had me on his podcast recently too. So
Yeah. Yeah, because it seems like it is destroying so much, and he's obviously somewhat of a hero in the Bitcoin space from the work that he's done. It's usually the first book that we recommend to people getting into Bitcoin.
yes, you have to understand the enormity of the problem before you understand the solution to it.
Well, that's why I love the show that we're having right now here together, because it really, if you don't understand the problem, the solution really makes no sense, or you're not even think that you even need a solution. But I love the way how you kind of explain the problem of the food, the problem of the light environment, the problem of even relationships, because then people can maybe put their finger on why they're so sick. Because I really just think people don't understand why they're so sick, and so they just get addicted to these never-ending stream of pills,
Yeah.
and they're not getting any better.
Yeah, and it's helpful to also link why our healthcare system is broken to why our money is broken. And in order for a lie like our modern medical system to propagate and to stay active the way it is it has to be funded by something it's not the free market. It's funded by fiat money. It's funded by money that's going to where it shouldn't be going. And the only way you have access to that sort of money is through money printing. And that's what fiat does.
Yeah.
If healthcare was on a free market standard, if you'd pay for the services that you want that make you feel better, then we wouldn't have a healthcare system the way we do.
Yeah. So can you speak for a minute just on how, I have heard you, and I've heard, Texas Slim and others say that research is funded by the people who it benefits. But if you're not in that circle, you have no idea it goes on. Can you maybe talk about that a little bit for people that are not in research?
Yeah. So I mean, let's maybe say that there's a sort of condition that people are interested in finding a solution for, and the solution is simply maybe a vitamin D supplement. Vitamin D cannot be patented. So if you go and put in studies on randomized controlled trials on how vitamin D can heal this issue, this problem, you will not get you're not going to get any benefit financially once you start selling the vitamin D to people. So pharmaceutical companies, they can patent certain compounds. These are compounds that are not natural, and they run studies on these compounds for certain conditions. And because they can patent this compound for say 10 years, then they can sell that compound for as much money as they want. And so all the research that's done on medical conditions is done by these pharmaceutical companies. If I would try and do a study on, say, vitamin D, my study is never going to get as much attention as theirs does. It's not going to get as much funding. It's not going to be as well designed as theirs. And so the system just propagates, creating more pills that are able to be patented, rather than actually addressing what can actually help the patient.
Yeah. So essentially, these people are looking for a 10-year monopoly on a compound, and the compound can't be so natural and abundant and already available. Nobody's going to issue a patent, like you said, on vitamin D. So they basically gear the studies towards this medicine. The study basically says this is what it does, whether it's true or not, so they can get this patent, and then doctors are prescribing it just based off of the studies. So it seems like doctors follow the studies, and the studies are following the fiat.
Doctors follow guidelines, and the guidelines, so there'd be like the American College of Cardiology or the American Endocrine Society. These societies are basically like a collection of doctors that write guidelines for how physicians should practice. These societies are very heavily funded by pharmaceutical companies. Just so look at our studies, follow up what would benefit us. And they have it on their websites. They say that we're sponsored by X and Y pharmaceutical company, but that's just how the system is.
Yeah.
The other issue with the US, why we are in a healthcare crisis like we are now, is something that was called the Flexner Report. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
I'm not.
The Flexner Report was a report that was written in the early 1910s, and it was basically an attempt by the Rockefeller and the Rockefeller Foundation to try and standardize medical education. And when they mean standardized, that means that they wanted to shut down any medical school that did not follow pharmaceutical medicine. So around 50% of medical schools at that time that taught other things such as homeopathy, naturopathy, osteopathy, all of these medical schools were shut down just so the standard of care would become pharmaceutical medicine. The problem with that is that not every condition is fixed by a pill. There are other ways to heal people. There are other ways to think about a problem. These were all made illegal. And unfortunately, Rockefeller was heavily invested in the pharmaceutical industry because they're all petroleum-based chemicals. And that was the beginning of how our modern healthcare system was created.
Wow. And so that's still in place today, pretty much.
That's still in place today. Or all medical schools teach traditional pharmaceutical-based medicine.
Yeah. I kind of got the same message from my cattle rancher buddy. He said it's like this is being taught in veterinary schools, especially in the American markets. I've even heard the American markets as somewhat of a food desert. Even though we're surrounded by food, there really is no nutrition around us. What's your take on that?
Yeah, soil naturally, you can't plant on soil all year. Naturally, what happens is you plant on it for a season and then you allow it to rest for a season or half a season. And when you say rest, it should just be grass, and then the animals should come and feed on it, and their manure should fertilize the soil, and the cycle continues. Modern pharmaceutical-based fertilizers have allowed us to continuously grow the land for all year round. But when you're doing that, you're depleting it of its nutrition. By nutrition, I mean the vitamins, the minerals. You're only giving a certain amount of minerals that the plant needs to grow, but that plant is not nutritious.
Right.
And
so the fruit and the plants look healthy because they have just the minerals to make them look good, but internally there's really no nutrition.
Exactly. And they tend to select for the produce that looks good. Nobody cares about the nutritional content.
Mm-hmm. I noticed that even when I would grow some food in the garden, when I would cut it open, it would just fill the whole kitchen with like a cucumber. The smell it would smell the whole house. Whereas today, when you cut it, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful piece of fruit, but it's almost void of nutrition.
No flavor too.
Yeah. And so then the key is just to, again, back to locally source. I know the cattle ranchers say, go shake the hand of your cattle ranchers. I would say, go shake the hand of your farmer as well. And that would be good advice for everyone.
100%. And a lot of this vast agriculture, it's also depleting the soil, and it's leading to desertification. That this land is going to become arid in a few years. Mm-hmm. And they use that to attack meat eaters, saying, well, you can use that land more efficiently if you just grow corn on it all year. But that just doesn't fit the natural life cycle, because you need animals there to fertilize it. If you don't have the animals, the land is not going to last very long.
And so what are we doing to kind of prop the land up to keep it going?
There's a lot of people that talk about regenerative agriculture, like the Beef Initiative. And the main thing is that you need life on it. You need animals on it.
Yeah. And it's them kind of walking through it, eating the grass, putting the manure in it, and giving the land a chance to rest and rejuvenate. That's what's happening when these herds are on it, correct?
Exactly, yes.
Okay. Man, I would love to, maybe we can schedule a time where we can do this, and I'd have you and the cattle rancher on at the same time. But who else do you think would be good for me to interview on this very topic? I've even thought about maybe creating a show for, experts like yourself to kind of have more, maybe once a week or something, that I have just this topic spoken about. I don't hear enough about it.
Yeah, I can think of names to send you. I'll send them to you later. There's a lot of interesting voices out there.
Yeah, because I definitely would like to get this content out there. It's really changed just eating red meat, and not the fancy red meat that the Beef Initiative talks about. I'm trying to get it. There's a place maybe about 100 miles away from me that is raising their cattle correctly, but just by trying my best to find grass-fed, pasture-raised meat has completely changed my energy and my health, and I've done nothing else. So I can't wait to start applying a lot of this sunlight and other stuff that you're talking about. That's going to be amazing.
Yeah. There's a book I would suggest to your readers and to you. It's called The Vegetarian Myth by Larry Keith. Very, very informative about this stuff, about how a vegetarian diet is not good for us and not good for the planet. And she goes through all the studies. And
so, book recommendations. I got Vegetarian Myth. What else you got?
Yeah. There's the book called The Plant-Based Con.
Plant-Based Con. All right. Anything
There's a book
else?
called Good Calories, Bad Calories by Gary Taubes. Also looks into, because people tell you, just don't, just have to count calories. Don't be concerned about the content of the food. But this book goes through how a fat calorie is different than...
All right. Any others?
I have another one by The Big Fat Surprise is a good one.
Oh,
by
yeah.
Bishop.
That one.
Yeah, and she goes through like how I explained the 7-country study, how the entire anti-fat propaganda started, and what do the studies actually show.
Now, that's the one that talks about high cholesterol, high blood pressure, and it was maybe diagnosed as all coming from saturated, red meat type fats, and which is false according to this book.
Yes.
Okay, so anybody listening, this would be the content you would find to have a good discussion with someone who says if you eat all that red meat fat, it's going to kill you, it's going to cause high blood pressure, high cholesterol. That is false, and this would be the book to kind of prove it. Are there any other kind of YouTube channels, podcasts, other people that like yourself that you can think about this later, that you might recommend people follow?
Dr. Sean Baker, he's very good. He's a carnivore doctor. He's been carnivore for years. Puts on a lot of good work. Paul Saladino also, very informative. Saladino.
How you spell that last name? S-A-L?
Saladino. He's also a carnivore. Very informative. He goes into a lot more varied topics as well, other health topics. Probably a golden standard if you want to try and understand something about health is the Weston Price Foundation. Their website is westonprice.org. They're based on the works of Weston Price, who I discussed earlier. They go through a lot of very interesting stuff about diet, about dentistry, about toxins. So they're also very helpful.
Fantastic. Yeah, I'm going to look into. I'm going to try to create like a little list of books and authors we can follow aside from yourself. And then I imagine a lot of these people are also on X, where they can follow their
Yes.
posts real time. Now, how
The,
about go ahead.
the Great Cholesterol Con is a good book by Dr. Kendrick. His name is Dr. Kendrick. Explains everything about why you shouldn't be concerned about cholesterol and why animal fat is not bad for you.
Yeah, the Great Cholesterol Con. Man, I needed you at dinner about a week ago at the Bitcoin at the Bitcoin conference. I was on the ropes with some of my medical friends trying to
Yeah.
tell cholesterol is not that bad for you, but
Next
now
time, just give me a call.
that's it. I am. Were you able to? Do you ever attend any Bitcoin conferences or anything like that?
I did go last year. This year, I couldn't time it well with my schedule, but I did go last year. They're great events. Great to meet people that are in the same wavelength.
Yeah. Are there any other conferences based on this topic on health and wellness that are out there that you'd recommend attending?
I, I, there probably are. I'm not very familiar with them. The internet is so vast that I think you can just learn so much from there. So I'm still trying to understand a lot of what's on the internet before I go start meeting people in person. So
Yeah, aren't we all? It seems
yeah,
like it's so much more efficient to find people that are working all the way at the front of the line on the internet than in person.
yeah.
Um, well, man, I'm so glad we connected. Maybe like I said, in a month or so, I can reach out to you and we can schedule something. I'd love to get you on with one of the cattle ranchers, and have y'all go back and forth, and we'll just go from there. That would
That'll
be
be
great.
great. That'll be great.
Fantastic. Well, what a great Monday for me. This has been 2 great interviews today. So thank you so much for your time, Ahmad.
Thank you so
And
much, Craig. Have
yep,
a great rest of your day.
you too. Look forward to talk to you again.
Bye bye.
All right. That was Dr. Ahmad Ammous. Does some great work uh, in the medical field centered around Fiat food. We also heard that he spoke a lot about how important sunlight is, especially in the morning and in the evening, to set your body straight and on the right path. I can't wait to read more about him and have him more on the show. If there's anybody else similar to him, I've actually got a few people. The more I was talking to him and the more I was talking to the people in the cattle business, really trying to make sure that we highlight how low the quality of food is in our grocery stores and where to find good food, and really to try to bust a lot of these myths around red meat, around sunlight. And it seems like, at least I was raised my whole life, I was taught that red meat and the fat in red meat is bad for you and that sunlight is bad for you. Turns out that it's just the opposite. That sunlight's good for you, red meat's good for you. I love how Dr. Ammous said, because we're made of red meat. And so that's why red meat is so much more digestible and we can absorb a lot of the fats and a lot of the nutrition stored in red meat versus maybe poultry and fish. I never thought of it that way. So I'm gonna research this a lot more and really try to produce some content specific, maybe even a weekly show around this type of content when it comes to food and sunlight, more of the medical profession that can come in and speak on this. So thank you so much, Dr. Ammous. Can't wait to have you back on. And to everyone in the audience, if there's anyone like him that y'all are following, please send them to me in the DMs. I'd love to interview them, maybe help get their content out there, and just start creating good content to highlight these guys' work. So appreciate everybody. Encourage me on this journey here. Again, I'm Craig LeBlanc, the doorman. I'm creating something that really highlights people working in a low time preference. I even called it LTP TV. So is there anyone out there that is building for the future, that's building with a long time, not looking to get the quick buck, but really laying down a good foundation in your creative abilities? So Anyway, Craig LeBlanc, the doorman. Have a great Monday, and I will see y'all again here tomorrow. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Inflation is stealing your purchasing power, but what if there was a way to fight back? Enter Bitcoin, the digital currency that empowers you to take control of your wealth. Ever wondered why your money doesn't stretch as far as it used to? At the Daily Bitcoin Podcast, we educate, inform, and inspire. From expert interviews to breaking news, we bring you everything you need to stay ahead in the Bitcoin community. Market updates, expert insights, real-world use cases, and practical tips to navigate the Bitcoin economy. So whether you're a seasoned Bitcoin investor or just getting started, this is your daily dose of Bitcoin wisdom. Don't miss out. Subscribe now, hit that bell icon, and let's break free from the chains of inflation, one Bitcoin at a time. The Daily Bitcoin Podcast, your gateway to financial freedom.